Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. My name is Kara, and I'm a holistic health practitioner for both people and pets. After working for years in the conventional medicine field, I realized that while our lifespans may be getting longer, our health spans are rapidly shrinking. And when it comes to our pets, both their length and quality of life are decreasing. When I turned to functional medicine and a more holistic approach to health, I saw dramatic improvements for my pets, myself, and my patients. Join me each week as I merge natural health for people and pets by focusing on the root cause of disease and applying raw, real remedies that you can use to improve overall wellness for every member of your family, including the furry ones.
Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to give you a word from my sponsor, and that is CBD Dog Health. Now, I'm a supplement snob, which means that I care deeply about quality, transparency, sourcing, and formulation. I want organic ingredients, clean formulations, third-party testing, and COAs that are available for every batch. And that's exactly how CBD Dog Health and their sister company, MycoDog, approach everything they make. In our house, we use their Ease and Calm full-spectrum hemp extracts, every mushroom blend, their hemp-infused treats, and their paw salves. These are products that I genuinely trust and use regularly with my own dogs. So if you're looking for supplements that prioritize real quality, transparency, and long-term wellness for your pets, I highly recommend checking out CBD Dog Health and MycoDog because your furry family members deserve the good stuff too. Make sure you use code RAWREMEDIES for 15% off your purchase. And with that, let's get to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Raw Remedies. Spring has sprung. I hope you're enjoying the warm weather. I'm really excited to bring you an episode with a really fantastic guest today, and his name is Greg Tilford. Greg is an expert in herbal medicine for animals, and he has over 30 years of experience as an herbalist and teacher. His work started when living off-grid in Montana for 11 years, during which he was engaged in an intensive study of wild medicinal plants and the delicate balances and interdependencies that exist between them, the animals, and the environment. Greg has written 4 books, including the acclaimed Herbs for Pets, which is considered a gold standard by hundreds of veterinarians worldwide. Other published works include the Eco-Herbalist Field Book, Edible and Medicinal Plants of the West, and From Earth to Herbalist, plus dozens of magazine articles. A popular speaker, Greg has spoken to audiences around the world, including Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, and Central America, focusing not just on the medicinal uses of herbs, but also on the powerful healing connections between humans, animals, and the earth. In 2019, he was named the National Holistic Teacher of the Year by the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. Greg is also the founder of Animal Essentials, a company that has been making natural pet supplements since 1995. His work promotes natural health for pets and understanding the bond between humans and animals. Today is going to be a great episode which relates to the season, so let's get going, and I think you're going to learn a lot about what you can do to help your whole household this spring season. All right, everybody, and we are back with Greg Tilford. Greg, I just want to first start by saying thank you so much for coming on today. We had some technical difficulties and some time zone changes, but we made it happen, and I think this is going to be a really great conversation for all of my listeners, and I'm just really excited to spend the next hour talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me on. This is great. I look forward.
Could you maybe just tell us a little bit about what brought you into the realm of herbalism and why you decided that animals were where you wanted to sort of hang your hat, so to speak?
Well, it's interesting because I got into herbal medicine in pretty much the same way everybody does, looking for an alternative to conventional medicine, looking for healthier solutions, safer solutions, etc. And that was, geez, 30-something years ago. And then after that, I moved to a very remote location in Montana and lived
Oh,
off-grid for 11 years on a mountainside in Montana, and started collecting plants and went into the business of harvesting plants for the herb industry and the
yeah.
nutraceutical industry and such. And it was really interesting because I became a professional wildcrafter and we ended up making like 40 medicines just off the 20 acres we lived on. It was
Wow.
pretty remarkable, right? But in the course of that, I started to take note that, hey, I'm not the only one using this. I'm
Okay.
seeing evidence and I'm watching animals use it. And I'm watching behaviors like elk nibbling just a couple bites of spotted knapweed, which isn't a forage of theirs. It's actually could be hepatotoxic to them in large amounts.
Hmm.
But what I figured out is they were using it as a bitter tonic before they went to their feeding grounds. And so I started to realize that, wow, not only is everything else in the forest here using herbal medicines like I am, but guess what? We probably learned about it from the animals too. I mean, how else
Yeah.
did we learn? Aboriginal people would follow animals all over the place for generations, trying to learn what the bears used, the birds ate and used for medicine, what the cats were rolling in, and all that kind of stuff. And I became really fascinated with it. And I thought, my first wife and we thought, let's abandon the thought of opening a tincture company or a herb company for people, and let's focus on animals. And so, I've always loved animals, and we've always used them in our pets, and our neighbors and fellow herbalists are using them in their pets. And so I thought,
Yeah.
nobody's doing this professionally. So I reached out to a couple holistic vets, and I said, if there was anything that a holistic herbalist can do in your clinic that would help make life better for you and your patients, and of course, the people that take care of the animals in your clinic, what can I do? And they both said, the biggest problem we see is these allergy issues, skin problems, itchy, chronic skin
Yeah.
problems, and dry nose, and digestive issues, and all kinds of things that are relative to the body not being able to eliminate waste. The
Uh,
byproducts of even good protein nutrition are ending up in the blood too long and causing problems. Anything that's there too long is viewed by the body as an antigen, or it ends up in the joints as arthritis or cancer or whatever. So I came up with this formula called detox formula, and it's still
uh,
in our line, Animal Essentials line.
uh,
And I really didn't think it would work because it's one of the classic combination of herbs that humans would use for psoriasis, eczema, for clearing the liver, for helping support liver function more appropriately, to boost liver function. And to use it that way in humans, you'd have to be religious about taking it every day. You'd have to make lifestyle changes, diet changes, and you wouldn't see results for 2 or 3 months on average. And I
uh,
thought, that's not going to work in a vet clinic because they want to see results, right? And the vet's
immediately.
not
Yeah.
going to be able to go through the learning curve of teaching people how to think holistically and everything else. So I thought this isn't going to work. So in 2 weeks, I got the first call back and they said, "Hey, Greg, it's working. We've seen
Wow.
improvements in the coat. We're seeing improvements in energy." And I said, "No, it's not me. It can't work that fast. It's something else." And they said, "I'm pretty sure it isn't." And then the second vet called and said the same thing. And I said the same thing. It can't work that fast. So I started sending it out to more vets that they knew, and they came back with the same results. And finally, one said, you want to see the liver panels? You want to see the results?" And so I did, and I went, wow, you know, it is working. And what I've learned in the 30 years since is that
Uh,
herbal medicines being the original medicine for animals, it is the number one choice of medicine among animals in nature, has been for a
yeah.
million years. And it works very freely in them because, frankly, they don't have to overcome the belief systems that we do. They don't have to overcome all of the
Right.
prejudices and all the stuff we've been taught. And, there's no placebo argument when you put burdock root into a mouth of a beagle and you see improvements in the skin, right?
Hmm.
And so it's energetically, completely vibrationally aligned to them to use herbal medicines and to seek herbal medicines. And that's where it went for me. And ever since, I've just been, it's like, it's boosted my everything about being an herbalist because I get to see these herbs really work the way that nature intended in animals, and without the arguments, without the belief systems. Well, that's never been proven, it's never been validated, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And,
No mental barriers.
no
No,
mental
this is
barriers,
woo woo.
and
Yeah.
where the mind goes, the body follows.
Yeah.
And, we see that in cancer patients all the time. Oh, you've got a cancer, and
Hmm.
immediately the patient goes, I'm going to die.
Hmm.
And they convince themselves they're going to die. And guess what happens? They die.
They die.
Right. So
Yeah.
animals don't have that burden, and
Yeah.
so it is their medicine. And we learned our internal medicine from them using herbal medicine. I mean, upwards of 40% of all of our medicine today in pharma is derived from a botanical premise, meaning that we learned something
Yeah.
from plants. We either synthesized it or we collected it from the plants. But that is nature's medicine chest. And since then, now I'm realizing that holistic healing really transcends both the caregiver and the recipient to include the health of the environment, the health of the plants themselves, and what's going on in nature. That's part of the system. Earth has this amazing system of healing, that is designed for everybody, but you have to be in sync with it. Pharma will always be against us. You know, there's all kinds of dandelion studies out now. I just did an article on my Substack. By the way, that's the best way to reach out to me, and I'll be doing all kinds of webinars and stuff based from that. It's my intent to not just share herbal medicine and how to exploit the nature of plants, but how to step back into that system, that circle of life that supports all of us. And that is holistic healing. And so again, I looked at these dandelion studies, and it's obvious from the studies that, when in vivo and in vitro, dandelion root extract alone was able to inhibit the growth of cancer in 90% of recipients. I guarantee that it will just be ignored and sequestered and pushed down by pharma
Yeah.
because they don't want us to learn how to use stuff that grows out of the cracks in the sidewalk. It's in public domain.
Yep. I
You know,
agree.
I have trained about 600 veterinarians on an estimate on how to use veterinary
Wow.
botanical medicines. I've spoken at a lot of the higher education colleges, Tufts University, Colorado State University, School of Veterinary Medicine. I've been as far away as the Japan School of Herbal Medicine or veterinary medicine. And
That's amazing.
ever since I've lectured all over the place, and I do continuing education for vets and sign their certificates, but I can't have one myself because I'm not a vet. But
I get it.
it's been a ride. It's been really wonderful, and the best part of it is to see animals see their life extended and their ears
Yeah.
perk up, and the happiness and joy of having an animal, a companion animal in your house is one thing, but to actually share the healing process and the wellness process with them is really deepens everything. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's a
To
beautiful
see
thing.
them thrive, not just live there, but actually truly thrive, extending
It-
not just their lifespan, but their health span, right? So
right.
the goal is not always to live as long as possible, it's to live as well as possible. And I
Absolutely.
think that
And
herbal
that I
medicine
learned
is,
that. Yes. And I don't know
yeah.
about you, but I learned that from my dog.
Me too.
I mean, if we'd spend more time paying attention to what our dog is doing and how our dogs think, we'd be a lot healthier because they live in the now. They
Yep.
don't live in anticipation of death. They don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. They don't care about
Yep.
the past. They just live right now like this is the last moment. Let's go. And we should too, you know?
Yeah. And we're not very good at that as people, but I agree. I
No.
think animals teach us a lot, and that's certainly how I ended up here. Right, was my dog. He was ill.
Yep.
Conventional things didn't work, and I had not just the normal pet parent mental barriers to overcome. I also had the 10 years of healthcare professional working in conventional medicine barriers to overcome. So it took me a minute, and it actually, even after I made that change for my dogs and then my cats to nutrition and herbal medicine and more holistic approaches, it still took me almost another 8 months to go, why am I not applying this to people? So it's a stepwise process, but definitely the way, you have a legacy already. I mean, you're still here, and you're still making that legacy, but to be able to touch so many lives through, what's that movie called where it's like 6 degrees or something, right? Where one
6 degrees of
person,
separation or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Imagine how many pet parents you've inadvertently helped because of all of those veterinarians that you have trained, and they've learned so much from you, and they just go on to help other animals and then train other vets, and it just is a snowball effect. So that's
Yeah. Yeah.
awesome.
And, the whole mission throughout all of this, when I created and started Animal Essentials back in 1995,
Yeah.
here's the mission of the company, first of all.
Yeah.
To improve and enhance the quality of life in companion animals, their people, and the communities they live in. And it all boils down to that because the animals come into our home not just to bring us joy and entertainment, but they're really teaching us values that humans can't
Mhm.
teach. Problems of time wasted, patience,
Yeah.
they just love so purely, and they teach our kids values that we can't. And they help with autism, they help with blood pressure, they help with all these
Mhm.
different things. And the biggest thing they do is they provide a link between humankind and the natural realm. Because once we understand their ways of healing and their systems of healing and their internal differences and their external differences, Then we start understanding, okay, this is also how nature operates. And when we start
Mhm.
getting connected to the medicine we're putting into them, which you can't do with a little pharma pill, but with, okay, where did this herb come from and where are the issues surrounding this plant? Then you start discovering things that you didn't know before because you're giving something to your dog, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're aware of all these issues and things that humans can correct if they're aware of it and they follow their heart instead of their head. And the animals allow us to follow our heart really well. They get us out of our head. They put the process into our heart where it belongs instead of, the head, the brain holding the heart hostage all the time, which it does. And that is severely missing from humankind right now. And it's what
Yeah.
disconnects us from the rest of the world because the nature of planet Earth lives in our heart. All of our hearts, every animal on Earth, every insect is connected by energetics of what goes on in the heart, in my belief. So it brings us closer to nature, which is really important. And that's what my newest writing is really about, earth herbs and animal wellness. And I'm writing a new book on holistic herbal medicine to replace herbs for pets at some point. And
I
it's
can't
just
wait to read it.
it's been great. I can't wait to read it
Well,
too, really.
once you're done with it, we'll add it to the list of books because and we'll mention them at the end because I want to know what your philosophy and where it comes from because that's what influences everything you do, right? And how the approach that you take and
Yep.
really the big why behind it. So I like that you mentioned, funny enough, because our topic today, a lot of it, we're going to be talking about seasonal allergies and natural pest prevention because unfortunately it is the season. And where I am, so I'm in New York, Western New York, which is a very Lyme endemic area,
Yep.
very high numbers out here. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, but kind of no matter where you are in the world, pests are still pesky. And we don't want to be poisoning our animals or ourselves in order to prevent them from getting on us and being in our homes and potentially causing problems. And so I love that you mentioned that, one of the first things that you worked on, right? You reach out to those vets and they said to you, well, allergies is a big problem. I think pest season goes hand in hand with allergy season. And unfortunately, they can look very similar in terms of symptoms sometimes, right? You get the itching, maybe you get the
Hmm.
skin rashes. You could have some GI issues with either of those things.
Right.
A lot of licking, fur staining on the paws from licking. So, they kind of look very similar. So, what is your approach to using herbs then for pets that are suffering from like seasonal allergies? Why don't we start there? Pets that are suffering from seasonal allergies.
Seasonal
You
allergies.
mentioned
Okay.
dandelion root. Is there
Yep.
anything else that you tend to reach for first?
Oh, nettle for sure. And
Hmm.
the reason I like nettle is, it's first of all, it's a very antioxidant, very nutritious plant. It's got pretty much every vitamin and mineral and vitamin B12 and protein and everything in it. So it's really good for your pet, but it also has its own histamine constituent. And it's not the same histamine that's produced by our body, but what it does is it mimics it when it enters the body. So the body slows its own production of histamine. Histamine is what causes the itch. Now,
I had no idea that that's how
it's
that
going deeper into
decreases
that.
the histamine
Yeah,
response.
yeah, going
That's
deeper
cool.
into that issue, histamine itself isn't the problem. There are
Okay.
four kinds of histamines. All the antihistamine drugs that we tend to use, like Benadryl and stuff like that, it only
Hmm.
approaches H1, number one.
Hmm.
There's four of them. They're all produced and they're all cleared in the gut by the microbiome, all of them.
Hmm.
And so the biggest problem with the histamine that causes the itch is histamine, that's just a minor part of what histamine does is approach antigens in the bloodstream. That's a minor component of what H1, H2, H3, and H4 do. They actually are responsible for producing and modulating hormone production and all kinds
Hmm.
of stuff in the body that's way more
Neurotransmitters.
important. And the problem with histamine isn't its presence, it's its clearance. It's not leaving the system when
Yeah.
the job is done. So the first thing to look at if you've got a pet, before you even reach for an herb, take a look at the terrain of the animal. Take a look at what
Hmm.
is it's subjected to. But most importantly, do a really good assessment of the gut microbiome because everything is the more we learn about it, the more we realize that it's responsible for like 80% of all the chronic illness that we're seeing because it's depleted.
Yep.
So before you run out and buy a bunch of herbs and read up on, and get your nettle ready. You can start using it if you want. But there's a company I would recommend looking up Animal Biome, which
Yeah,
is a pretty big company. And what they do is for $135, they'll send you a specimen kit, collect a stool sample of your dog or cat. I think they do cats too.
they
And
do. Yeah.
yeah, send it back and they'll do a count. They'll find out what's missing, what's lacking, and make recommendations on replacing that and bringing the microbiome back into balance. And that is critical for immune support. It's critical for the reactions to antigens and allergens and everything else to make if you're not approaching it from the gut first, you're kind of
Yes.
just approaching it symptomatically is what I'm realizing.
And for
That's where
anything,
that
right? So
right,
root
for
cause
anything,
approach. Yeah.
that's where the
Figure out
balance
why.
that's
Yeah.
where the
Don't
balance
just treat what.
begins. And so what they'll do is they've actually put fecal implants into capsules.
Hmm.
So and a fecal implant is where healthy stool is taken from a dog. You're probably really familiar with this. It's checked for, parasites. It's checked for any pathogens. It's checked to be complete. And when it enters your dog's digestive system, it starts reproducing and populating with healthy microflora that might not even be there. So that's the
Yeah.
first step on allergies. The allergies are just the body's response to something it recognizes as something that doesn't belong,
Foreign. Yeah.
and it's an overbearing response when we see all this inflammation, and that just basically says that it's not being cleared. It's probably a microbiome issue,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, your gut flora, well, not just your gut flora. I mean, you're covered in microbes, right? In your lungs, on
Absolutely.
your skin, in your mouth, it's everywhere. But that
Mhm.
gut microbiome plays such an integral role because it interacts so closely with the immune system. And so I
Yep.
agree that one of the first things that you should be doing if you have an animal or yourself, who is
Yeah,
suffering from seasonal allergies or eczema or autoimmune disorders, food sensitivities, you need to look to the gut first because it's coming from
absolutely.
there and you're expressing that gut dysfunction outwardly. The gut skin axis, the gut brain axis, your gut is tied so intricately to everything and your immune system is just so important.
Don't expect to rebalance it with just a probiotic that has 5, 6, 10, or even 20 different bacteria in it because your dog's
Yeah.
gut has 1,000 or more,
Yep.
right? And most of them aren't even approached by commercial supplements. Those supplements are good for maintaining a healthy
Hmm.
microbiome, but not for rebuilding one. It's not
Yeah.
enough.
I'm a big fan of, I mean, I want my dogs to eat the dirt, go out in the dirt. I
Mhm.
like to give them their meals outside. I'll put it on the platter. They'll get it all over the grid. They'll pick up a piece, they'll turn their head, drop it, come back to it later. I give them their raw meaty bones or their air dried chews out there and they'll lay in the dirt and they'll gnaw on it and it gets filthy and I'm like, yeah, you replenish that microbiome. So,
Yes, I can almost
yep.
guarantee that on the human side, we're going to start seeing dirt tea again. And that used to be,
Probably.
in Appalachia and a lot of places in the United States where there's still a
Yeah.
lot of, third generation, fourth generation herbalists stirring up a teaspoon of dirt and giving it to their kids in the morning. As long as
Yeah,
you
the
know it's in dirt, you know,
Yeah.
because
Well, right,
the
yeah, as
chemical the
long as you know
chemical exposures are
no
becoming
pesticides.
just so frightening. I mean, they're finding Roundup in everything. They're finding Roundup in certified organic oats just
Yep.
because it's coming from the weather systems and from the aquifer. So, there's no such thing as one detox anymore. It's about maintaining the pathway so that it keeps moving toxins through.
Yes, I
You
agree. It's
don't
all about
detox once. It's about keeping it going and starts with the microbiome.
yeah. And it always makes me laugh when people are like, "Well, detox is a scam because your liver is detoxing every day and they didn't do that years ago." Well, years ago, every square foot of this earth was not covered in pesticides and we weren't ruining our soil and having nutrient depletion and we
Yep,
were eating foods that were more nutrient dense and so our detox pathways were fueled up and ready to go because they had all the support that they needed. I mean, things will continue to change and unfortunately get worse unless we get our act together. So supporting lymphatic flow, supporting our natural detox processes and systems is very important. And it's not, only do it in the spring because spring is the season of the liver. It's make sure you're supporting all those pathways all the times. And I try and do it naturally through food when I can. And then, of course, an herbal approach as well, which
And it's
herbs are
all,
food
this
too.
is all, everything
So,
you're mentioning, everything you're talking about is secondary to our connection with nature.
mhm,
If we were animals, we wouldn't have to think about it. We'd do it,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have to think about it. So guess what? By
And
becoming
that's
an
the
herb
zoo
user,
pharmacognosy, right? Where they
yeah,
self-select what they need for the
zoopharmacognosy, yes, it's
exactly.
amazing. It's a science that shows that, it's proven that animals, especially the apes, but animals in
Mm,
general, have the ability to accurately select the plant medicines they need. They know how to dose it, and they know when to stop taking it.
mhm. Yeah.
So there's a lesson there too. If your cat's chewing on philodendron or something that's not supposed to eat in the house, don't just take the plant away, but read about what's in the plant and try to figure out what
Mm,
is the vibrational attraction to that plant that the animals, the dog, cat, or whatever is trying to fulfill.
yeah. What
Because
were
they're
they
not just
looking
doing it
for?
randomly. They're not doing it just because it tastes good, you know.
What about when your cat chews on cardboard?
Then consider getting some grass, some wheatgrass for
Yep.
fiber, you know.
Yep. I love when people have little cat gardens, right? And they'll have different things in there, some wheatgrass, some catnip, and I just think our cats don't get outside anymore, right? They don't feel the soil on their paws, and they're certainly not replenishing their microbiome by chewing on their raw meaty bones or consuming small mice, right? So
Right,
I bring if they can't be outside, bring the outside into them. It's so important.
right. And be aware that, we take a lot of things for granted in the environment. We walk our dog in the park and
Hmm.
you look across the park and there's somebody spraying, you know, weed abatement or something on the grass.
Yep.
And as humans, we think, okay, we can just avoid that and we're above that. I'm
Hmm.
6'2". I'm 6 feet above my feet,
Hmm.
but the dogs and cats and animals in our lives are walking with
Yeah.
not only just walking with their face in it all the time, but they're licking
Yep.
it off their paws.
The paws. Yeah. They ingest it.
So their
Yeah.
their exposure is many, many times higher than ours,
Yeah.
which should motivate people to say, again, this is where animals take us. Start questioning your park officials. What are you spraying on the lawn here? But make
Yeah.
an issue of it because it's really getting to be a very, very serious problem for
You
all of
know,
us.
it's scary.
Lymphoma is going through the roof, and these dogs, especially dogs, because we just the way we watch them, they're canaries in the coal mine.
Yeah.
They're dying from exactly the same kinds of cancer and ailments that we are on an
Just
accelerated
earlier.
level. And for me, it's like, okay, I went through 5 dogs in my lifetime before I started to make that connection that, wow,
Hmm.
I'm not immune to this stuff, you know?
Yeah. It's funny. So you mentioned lymphoma. I had a patient recently at my primary care practice, and he was young, my age, 30s. And when I was going over his medical history, he mentioned to me that when he was 18 years old, he had lymphoma. And I said, "Boy, that's rare at such a young age. What did you work at a golf course or something?" I was joking. He did. He and his friend, when they were 17 going into 18, they had just graduated high school and they went to work at the local golf course for a part-time job before starting college. And the next year, they both got diagnosed with lymphoma. Well, guess what they had them spraying at the golf course?
Of course.
Roundup.
The other thing about yeah, I know, and almost all these things, including spot treatment flea
Mhm.
remedies. We're here to
Mhm.
talk about parasites and ectoparasites
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, so let's get
The
into that, yeah.
manufacturer may say it's harmless to mammals. It's only attacks the nervous system of insects. Partly true, right?
Yeah.
Until the dog licks it off, and at
Mhm.
which point, stuff like imidacloprid and others, they're immediately converted back into nicochlor. I think it's called chloronicotinic acid, which guess what?
Mhm.
It's a neurotoxin.
Yep.
And then it's also, which they don't even talk about, they're all endocrine disruptors, meaning that
Mhm.
they deform and cause problems with our chromosomes.
Yeah.
They mess with the genealogy of the pet. So guess what? Now, a lot of the issues are generational that we see moving from one parent to the next parent. And now we're starting to see things manifest that were really picked up by grandparents, because
Yeah.
their chromosomes were damaged, and now they've imprinted this weakness or this problem in the offspring and the whole successive, it's terrible. So the
It's
best
a
we can
vicious
do is to try to
cycle.
stop it now and move those toxins through and use a lot of antioxidants. For
Yeah.
allergies, nettle, and I like using quercetin too as an antioxidant.
Yeah.
It's derived from most of it's derived from onion skins, but it's
A little
safe.
bit
It
in the
doesn't.
apples.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good one too. Animal Essentials has a great formula called seasonal allergy that you should take a look at. It's got it in powder with quercetin or in
Excellent.
liquid without, but it works really well. It works quickly. It's one of those herbs, those formulas that make non-believers into believers pretty fast.
Yeah. That's great for animals. For people, so I try my hardest to take a natural approach whenever I can at work. Now, I work in a conventional practice and I get 15 to 20 minutes with my patient and that's it. And not everybody who comes there is ready to open their minds that way, which I completely respect. But for the ones who are, I always will say, uh, are you interested in a natural approach to this? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yeah.
Yep.
And I'm a really big fan of, I wish I would have brought it in here because I just took some Mountain Rose herbs. I use their stuff all the time. So I actually just took a handful of turmeric just prior to recording because I went to go see my chiropractor and I waited way too long and my neck is really sore. So I took some turmeric and I have my arnica still is next to me because I put some arnica on my neck and but Mountain Rose Herbs has some good stuff for seasonal allergies for people. So
It's a good
I'll
company.
recommend that company to them. Yep. So and they have
Yeah.
capsules and they have tinctures and actually they're branching out now. They're making tea and they have like
Hmm.
organic flaxseed and chia and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I like them a lot. I use their stuff.
Yeah. They have
Um,
good ethics, and that's
yeah,
really
yeah,
important. And you mentioned turmeric, one of the most adulterated herbs in the world right now.
yes. You
Like
have to third party
30% of
test.
it's adulterated. I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And by
You
adulterated, I
can
mean it's got yellow
contamination
dye
right with
and
heavy metals.
or heavy metals. But by
Yeah.
adulterated, I mean people are literally adding things to it to market it
Do it.
at a different price point to make it
Yeah.
yellow. And
Yeah.
it might not even be turmeric at all. So I know I've worked with Mountain Rose for decades, and they're
Hmm.
very strict about their quality control and knowing what they're
Yeah.
selling. So it's a good source.
Yeah, they're a good company. So, pest prevention. So, we're talking about things that we can do to help with pest prevention. So, we don't want any of those nasty chemicals, which not only are going to harm our animals once they ingest them, but also get into our water supply and also get on our hands when we pet them. So, we're leaving all that stuff by the wayside. What can we use instead, then, which are some more natural approaches that are going to repel pests but not harm any of us?
The first thing, and I think the newest concept, and let me predicate this
Mm.
with this. I used to walk in front of my audiences and I'd say that everything here begins with diet.
Hmm.
And I don't believe that anymore. It all begins with changing the way we think.
Mm.
It all starts
Okay.
right here.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that parasites, it doesn't matter if they're internal or external parasites, they're all opportunistic and they're all seeking a weakened host. And they're all
Hmm.
attracted to the host vibrationally. That's how it works out there. That's how birds are able to fly in unison and how fish can swim in schools and how
Hmm.
bees find their way to the hive and to the flowers. It's all vibrational energy, right? And so if a body is putting out a weak vibrational signal showing that it's got a weakness or a weakened, that's what attracts them. So
Yeah.
treating from the immune boosting side with adaptogens,
Hmm.
especially things like ashwagandha and astragalus and licorice root, boosts the vital force and helps prevent you're not as attractive to those parasites. I mean, everybody's seen the scenario of a house full of dogs where one or two are just tormented by fleas and the rest don't seem to care,
Hmm.
you know? And it's
Yeah.
because the fleas are not interested in those dogs because they've got a strong immunity and they've got strong skin and they're designed to feed upon weak animals. Not, relatively speaking. So the first thing to
Yeah.
do is to make sure that you've got your immune system supported. You've got to have good diet going in. I mean, if things
Mhm.
are compounded by food allergies, then the flea bite's going to be even worse. And what
Mhm.
you're dealing with flea bites, it's not the flea. It has very little to do with the flea itself. It's the flea saliva
Saliva.
and
Yeah.
and the victim's sensitivity to it, which shouldn't exist. I mean, fleas and mammals have coexisted for millions of years,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So bringing the body back into balance with appropriate diet and the right herbs to support natural immunity is the
Mhm.
first key. And as far as diet goes, I'll just make this really quick. In my impression is there are a lot of important aspects of diet. I know you're more expert in this than I am,
Mhm.
but there are really only three components that are really critical to feeding um, another animal, even ourselves. And the first one is it has to be biologically appropriate.
Yep.
Because if you're putting stuff like legumes into a dog that with the expectation of them using it as a protein source, it's not going to work because they don't have the enzymes and they don't absorb, they just don't utilize protein from legumes. It causes more problems than benefits. So it's got to be biologically appropriate. It has to be of high quality. And by high
Mhm.
quality, I mean we're feeding carnivores and we're feeding dogs and cats. Their bodies require a higher grade of protein than ours. And yet they're eating the byproducts of our food at best in most cases, and we've got
Yeah.
to up that ante big time. And then the third part is diversity. And that's where by feeding a
Mhm.
diversity of different foods, just like us, just like feeding our own children, human children, is you've got to feed diversity so the body has a matrix of food and nutrition that it can just it can randomly select or eliminate freely because there's no such thing as static nutrition. It changes
Yeah.
every day. Your nutritional requirements are always changing according to the weather, hormone imbalances, infections, all kinds of stuff. And the animals in our lives are exactly the same. So you need to put that in place so their body can utilize what it needs, but it has to be good enough quality to eliminate it if it doesn't.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning of of uh, of controlling parasites. The rest is really treating the symptom and bringing relief. I mean, we can use um, like an infused tea of carrot seed
Hmm.
or to eliminate pests. It contains limonene, which is toxic to fleas and such.
Oh,
Oxeye
okay.
daisies contain limonene or pyrethrins, natural pyrethrins. So we can use rinses, peppermint to cool the skin and help bring a tingly, fresh feeling to the skin and relieve itching and inflammation and knock down infection. Calendula is another good one. And this is just, bringing relief, just making a
Yeah.
tea,
Yeah.
cooling it off and soaking your dog with it and leaving it outside and let it dry on. Internally, um, again, we're going to be treating with, I like licorice a lot because it's got a really strong anti-inflammatory effect. That is, I mean, it's the closest thing, and I hate to even use the word, to prednisone that there is in the uh, in the plant world. It doesn't have the side effects of prednisone, but it has its
Yeah.
own sterols, and it tends to help balance and regulate cortisol in the body. So it helps regulate inflammation, and at the same time, it's an adaptogen. And basically, all adaptogen
Mm.
means is it's an herb that improves the body's ability to respond to um, negative stimuli, whether it's physical or non-physical. So the immune
Stressors.
system works faster and more appropriately with adaptogenic herbs like licorice going in. So that's one of my favorite herbs right there for treating the torment of fleas.
Awesome.
Support the liver, support waste elimination. Dandelion root, dandelion
Mhm.
leaf. Dandelion leaf tends to be more diuretic. Dandelion root works at liver function and works very well at stimulating the liver and helping to move things out of the blood. There's not much that belongs in the bloodstream other than the components of healthy blood, and
Mhm.
uh, we're just tied up with all these waste products, and because we just can't metabolize them. And the same with our animals. That's why biologically appropriate food is so important, because if the system is tied up with trying to eliminate stuff that it can't digest, then its ability to deal with external antigens and proteins that are coming in through flea saliva is reduced dramatically.
Yeah.
So, food allergies, allergies to flea bites, seasonal allergies, they're all related. And they're all related to a deficiency of dealing with those compounds and
Yeah.
the
Those
energetics of the animal.
foundational
Yeah,
pillars, right? It's your immune health, your ability to detox, your
yep,
gut and what you're putting into it, nutrition and how that affects every single aspect of health. So
yeah, and
those are
avoid the
definitely
chemical.
about foundational pillars.
Yes, absolutely. Avoid the chemicals. Go to herbs and be patient. You know.
Yes.
Um,
Please. Please avoid
yes,
them.
I mean
I'm begging
it's
you, please.
yeah, and ticks.
Oh,
It's funny
yeah.
because
So
people always
let's talk about ticks.
yeah. As a deep thinking, holistic naturalist and herbalist, I
Mhm.
realize that everything in nature has a purpose. You
Yeah.
know. I think of mosquitoes, they're feeding trout, they're feeding swallows, they're feeding birds, I think of ticks, you know what they're good for? They make other bugs look good.
Okay. Look
But
at you looking on the bright side.
there's one essential oil that I think is really the only thing in
Oh,
my experience that at least 60% of the time I would say effectively repels ticks, and that's Laleshwa
yeah.
oil.
Is what?
Laleshwa.
I have never heard of that.
I know a lot of people haven't, and it's just
Okay.
starting to come into popularity. I've known about it for a while, and it's a bush, a small tree and bush that grows in South Africa, and it was discovered by watching wild animals rubbing against the trees, right?
Huh.
And it was determined that the animals that rub against the tree had fewer ectoparasites than ones that didn't.
Okay. So they were
And
like getting
you
the
can take
oils
a
on their
yeah, and
skin.
so it's really
Okay.
safe. You can get it online, and you can mix it 10 drops to, um, I'd say 8 ounces of water and maybe just a tiny bit of Castile soap as an emulsifier. Shake it up, and you can use that as a
Okay.
skin spray or to rinse and just leave it on. It smells pretty good, but it's remarkable. It's the only thing I've seen 60% of the time that will repel ticks. In fact, I've done my own little experiments where you take a tick, put it on a piece of water paper, you
Uh-huh.
put a drop of Laleshwa oil 4 inches away, it will stop like it hit a wall and turn the other
Wow.
way. It's remarkable.
Okay.
It's not
We
approved by
will.
EPA as an insecticide, so you won't
Of
find it
course
in,
not.
in commercial flea products.
Okay. Well, I will put that in the show notes so that people have the spelling and they can look for it and find it. Is there any supplier or company that sells that you would recommend people look
Um,
for?
I can't come up. There's only a few online that I found, but
Okay.
they all come from the same source, and I think they're all pretty good. I'll be doing it pretty soon.
Okay.
I'm planning on coming out with a Laleshwa product real
Oh,
soon.
excellent. Okay,
So,
we will have to keep an eye on your website because yeah, I'm in the Northeast, man, it's like a plague.
I
Ticks
know
are
I've been
like a
there.
plague. I've already had 3 patients come in the last couple of weeks who found a tick. They took, engorged, right? Removed it, saved it. I send it out for them to we'll test for Lyme.
Hmm.
But then you have to wait, right, before you test a person. So, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. And same thing for dogs, cats, whatever, is if you find a tick attached to you, you have to wait a couple of weeks before you test, actually upwards of 4 weeks, because otherwise it's going to be negative. It takes weeks to seroconvert to a positive Lyme.
Right.
Now, I know more about Lyme than I do about other things that ticks can transmit, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, now this alpha gall, which is just terrifying, anaplasmosis. And unfortunately, a lot of things can come together. You'll find multiple in one tick, but where I am, these deer ticks, they've got it's Lyme, and that's what everyone is the most afraid of is
You
Lyme.
got
So
those little tiny things the size of the head of a pin there too. I mean, I
there's
walked down a trail in
yeah,
Rhode Island a few years ago, and there was at least a foot and a half of clearance on both sides of the trail between my legs and brush. And
yeah,
I was walking on like cedar chips. It was a developed trail. I walked
yeah.
maybe 200 yards, and I pulled my pant leg up, and I had like 6 of them crawling up my ankles.
Ah!
It's like, wow. But the other
I
thing to
I
remember
hate
about
it so much.
specifically about Lyme disease, and
Yeah.
I don't have your experience and expertise with this, but there's a couple things that really isn't being shared with the consumer.
Uh-huh.
One, if your dog tests positive for the antibody, that's a good thing from a holistic standpoint because your immune system is producing the antibody.
Hmm.
And the other thing to think about is those antibodies could have been in the system for years.
Hmm.
Once they produce antibodies, they stay, and it kind of negates, in my mind, the dangers or risks of using a vaccine that is based on just boosting the same antibody.
Yeah, I'm
It
not very
takes
happy about what's
20,
coming out
24.
soon.
The other thing to remember, it takes 24 to 48 hours after a tick attaches for it to transmit Lyme into the body. So
Hmm.
get them off fast. And it takes 4 to 6 weeks before you'll even see the antibody result. The vast majority of dogs and cats with Lyme disease won't ever manifest any symptoms. 5 to 10% will, and most of the time those are okay too. So the only reason I say that is there's just too much fear-based marketing going on out there.
Yeah.
It's easier for people to treat the symptoms of a tick and feel good about it by putting a vaccine in or something, or doxycycline is a preventative antibiotic, which is going to strip out a lot of microbiome and
Good
everything
God.
else. That might
Yeah.
make us feel good, but it really isn't. It's not approaching the cause. And my approach with that is, if we got positive antibodies, that's a good thing. Just watch the animal for a manifestation of symptoms, which could occur in the next
Hmm.
several months, you know, and then treat
Yeah.
it from there. But I'm not going to say it's totally overblown, but there's too much fear based in how people are buying products for that and going into,
Yeah. It
same,
is a lot, and I think depends on where you are in the country too, right? So when
right.
I was living in California for a few years, I never worried about Lyme, and I pulled so many ticks, engorged
Well, let's
ticks
hear it.
off of my dogs, and I used let them, but I mean they're raw fed, and I make sure they get variety, and I make sure it's good quality. They ate better than I did out there, but being back home now. I do know some people who have had chronic Lyme, and it can be very impactful if it does lead to that.
Absolutely.
But I think the most frustrating thing about Lyme that people don't realize is that um, it's kind of like the great deceiver, right? It can manifest as any number of symptoms. It could be profound fatigue, or maybe it could be a rash, or it could be
Hmm.
joint pain. It looks like a lot of things that look similar to other things, right? Look similar to autoimmune diseases, look
Absolutely.
similar to, GI issues, look similar to endocrine disorders. And so I think that the best thing that you can do when it comes to Lyme is, of course, make sure that you're supporting the immune system because one of the reasons
Absolutely.
why Lyme is so hard to eradicate and I don't consider myself a Lyme literate provider. I know a little bit about Lyme, but there are people whose entire specialties are treating Lyme. But it's Lyme itself as a bacteria, as a spirochete, suppresses the immune system.
Hmm.
So it's a very opportunistic organism and it will cause immune suppression. And you can treat it. But the problem is it can hide, it can go dormant, it can shrivel up into a little raisin and hide inside your cells. And then as soon as the antibiotics are out of your system, it plumps back up and can cause a
Yep.
problem again. So it makes it very difficult to fully eradicate. And so I don't think that true eradication is what we should be looking for. I think that supporting the immune system is the most important thing that you can do if you have had exposure to Lyme or have been diagnosed with Lyme, because one of its main functions is that it's going to try and suppress the immune system. And so you need to support that immune system to prevent development or severity of symptoms of like chronic Lyme or tertiary Lyme, they
Right.
call it.
And it's important to remember that Lyme disease is way more dangerous to humans than it is to dogs and cats.
Hmm.
I mean, they have a pretty good immunity to it. Their incidence of contracting a really serious illness from a positive infection is low. It's really worse for us. I mean, it's worse for us, and to some extent, it's worse for horses. But dogs and
Oh,
cats,
really?
yeah, it's not. Animals aren't as susceptible to getting super ill as we are.
Yeah.
You know, and with all that said, there's a couple things. I'm a strong believer in immune tonics. I would be feeding mushroom supplements every day. I
Mhm.
do every day.
Yep, me too.
I've got one in powder. It has reishi, cordyceps, and maitake in one powder formula. It's really easy to feed. It's made from a
Nice.
hot water extract the way it's supposed to be. It's
Okay.
totally bioavailable. And then the second thing is olive leaf extract. And olive leaf extract,
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's my go-to for almost everything bacterial or even viral infections.
Yeah.
Back in 1969, the Upjohn Company, which later became Pfizer or Eli Lilly, was bought out by one of the
Mm.
others. They discovered that olive trees in nature are very resilient to what's killing all the other plants around them. And there's this folklore that says, oh, it's good for bacterial infections, it's good for blood pressure. So they decided, let's look at it and see if we can create a plant-derived antiviral drug.
Mhm.
And they found that it contained a really active marker compound, and there's a lot of active compounds in it, but they found one that they picked out called oloropian, and they took it out, isolated it from the plant with the hope of creating this antiviral drug. And the assays are amazing what they've discovered. It's active against rabies, it's active against
Huh.
HIV. They've shown all this stuff, hundreds of different things, right? And so they took the oloropian out with the intent of making a drug out of it, and guess what? It didn't work.
Didn't work.
They put it back into the
Yep.
entire plant, and the synergistic properties of the plant made it work again. So again, the
Yep.
old herbalist action, the whole plant is always greater than the sum of its parts. It
Yeah.
holds true. And I use Upjohn said, okay, we just spent millions of dollars and we can't do anything with it, but we're going to publish that paper. I use it all the time in my talks, but if there's one thing that I would be, and it's really safe to use, you could just feed it to your dog during
Yeah.
tick season to help. It also boosts immunity, but it has a
Mhm.
direct effect against so many bacteria that it's hard for me to believe that it wouldn't be active against um,
Fine.
limes. So
Okay.
that's my go-to herb for treating and preventing Lyme disease. There's a few others too that are very broad spectrum. Usnea lichen is another one. They call it the doxycycline of nature.
Interesting.
I
Yep.
don't use it as much in dogs and cats because I don't know how safe it is completely.
Mm.
Um, and it has to be extracted in alcohol, which is hard to feed because it's not
Mhm.
soluble at all. But
Yeah.
it works. It kills. It definitely will take it out.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
nice
I
thing
may
I
have to
call,
look into
and
that.
I call these herbs like olive leaf. I've coined a new term. They're not antibacterial. They're not just antifungal. They're not just antiviral, because all those things are anti, like antibiotic means against life, right?
Mhm.
That's how it actually translates. What they are is they're anti-pathogenic
Mhm.
because they have this ability, and this is an amazing thing that nature does. They sing out, these herbs and the constituents single out the pathogenic microbes and don't touch the microbiome or the beneficial ones. It's just part of their natural design as a natural medicine. It's what's intended,
Excellent.
So they're
Okay.
anti-pathogenic. They're not antimicrobial. They're anti-pathogenic. They just approach the pathogens, not everything.
Okay. And that's important because that's one of the biggest problems with these antibiotics. And that, by the by the way, for people, like if you're listening for yourself, you're interested in Lyme for yourself, not just your pets. In human medicine, the criteria is if you found a tick that was attached to you for more than 24 hours, they recommend there's two different recommendations. One is a single dose of doxycycline for prevention. Well, I don't really think that that's going to do much anyways because there's a lot of actually resistance now to Lyme for doxy.
Mm-hmm.
The other is doxycycline twice a day for a minimum of 20 days.
Yeah.
What is that going to do to the gut? It's
Oh,
going to ravage the environment that you actually need to
absolutely.
be nurturing and supporting to prevent the pathogenesis of that Lyme, right? Because what does it
Absolutely.
do? It suppresses your immune system. So you just
Yeah.
punched your immune system when you asked it to do something for you. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm not a fan.
Modern medicine's really good at exchanging one ailment with another.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
like,
Here's a
we're gonna
here's a
prescribe
medication for your problem, and here's another medication for the side effect of that medication.
exactly. It's like insane.
Oh
It's
my
insane,
gosh.
and it's all about
Yep.
money.
Yeah, I know. I
You
know.
know.
So, could you speak a little bit about, and I have some here next to me because I've actually shared them with my patients, but about, oh, people won't be able to see it. Ledum here, and this is
Hmm.
Boreon brand, which I use their stuff all the
Yeah,
time. But for like prevention, if you are in a Lyme endemic area and you think that it was the correct kind of tick, is this something that you would recommend or use?
absolutely. If you got let them, what do you have? 100?
This one is 200, but I've also seen 30. I know it comes
Yeah,
in different
I think
strengths.
30C is what I'm familiar with, and
Yeah.
it's a homeopathic remedy. I'm not a homeopath, but homeopathy works at an energetic level. It's
Hmm.
subatomic. You can't even find the original compound in the tablet, but it works. And that's why
Hmm.
FDA regulates it as an over-the-counter drug for that very reason,
Yeah.
because they recognize, well, we can't deny that things like we do with herbs because the science shows that it actually works, and
Yeah.
they've been a real pain in the butt too with people that are marketing, even Boron, they've bought everybody. Boron pretty much owns homeopathy now. But, yes, there is no harm in giving, a Letum to your dog every couple of days. And the idea is
Okay.
to, imprint or stimulate a process within the body where the body defends itself,
Hmm.
like it should. It's energetic medicine. So, yes, there's absolutely no harm in trying and using it. And I've heard really good
Awesome.
results. Really good
Yeah.
results.
I know that I think Dr. Judy and someone else has, I think actually Dr. Loudon, Dr. Linda Loudon too has one, um, a like a protocol, like a post-tick exposure protocol if you
Mhm.
would like to use Ledum, which I definitely don't know it offhand. But I think something good to just have, if you are in
Yep.
an area where you know that Lyme is prevalent. But I think the biggest takeaway here, if people cannot deduce it for themselves, is to support the immune system, support the foundations of gut health, and make sure that you are using the correct mentality when you're approaching health, right? Don't look at it as suppression or as, I'm going to develop this illness or I'm going to have these symptoms or this is going to make me sick. Focus on how you can be the healthiest version of yourself and create that energy and make sure that you're really connecting with the things that you're using. You're not just using green pharmacy where you're switching an herb for a pill.
Absolutely. And, the energy is really important. That, what you think is literally being broadcast. We don't
Hmm.
know it, but every one of the 37 trillion cells in your body has
Hmm.
the ability to not just communicate with one another, but they communicate to the outside environment. It's been proven over by science many times over now.
Yeah.
And it's all energetic. I mean, we're taking brain scans with equipment that's, over a foot away from our head. And it's not reading, it's reading energy, so everything's
Hmm.
energetic. And what you think matters. It really does. When you get into negative thinking and get out of it, find a way to put yourself into positive thinking, get into meditation because it affects not just you, it affects everything around you. The people in your
Yes.
environment and the animals in your environment are sponging up, especially the animals. They're sponging up
Hmm.
your energy, and I hear this all the time from people say, I've got this hyperactive dog, he's got fear aggression and yada, 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 yada. And they're always fighting in the
Yep.
house
Yep.
and they wonder why the dog's getting sick.
Yep. Look to
It's,
yourself.
yeah,
Yep. Look to
everything.
yourself and the
True
energy you're putting out.
activism, true activism starts with yourself.
Yeah.
It starts under your kitchen sink. It starts on your front lawn. It starts in your
Hmm.
backyard. You can't just cut a check to your favorite organization and hope that it goes away. It's got to, and you've got to share that with others. Say,
Yeah.
lead by example, change your life, change the way you think. That's the step toward holistic healing. It's changing the way you think. Think, of the whole body and what affects the body, and that's outside of the body too. And I guarantee you, every of those 37 trillion cells in your body are responding to what's going on outside.
Yep. The law of attraction. You're putting out and then you're going to take it in.
Yep.
So, Greg, how can people find you, follow you, learn from you? How can they look at your products? Tell our listeners where they can find you because I
Well,
know they're going to want to.
I'm really on a big campaign right now to increase my educational outreach. I'm writing 2 courses. I'm writing a bunch of mini courses, and I've got a new Substack up. It's called the Animal Herbalist Substack. It's free to join. I'll be posting all kinds of invites and all kinds of articles, and it's just getting going. But please go on to that and join as a member. That's a good way to reach out to me and find me.
Awesome.
The products I formulated are all being manufactured and distributed by Animal Essentials, www.animalessentials.com. And you can find that there. And I'm sure that there will be a discount code attached
I'll
to
put everything
this.
in the show
Yeah,
notes. I will
right.
link it all. Yep.
And that's a good start. But, feel free to reach out to me, especially on my Substack. I read it every day. I'm a little bit behind on my posts because I've been traveling,
Sure.
but I look forward to seeing you all there for sure.
Excellent. And make sure everybody keeps an eye out for this book, which I don't know when it's coming, but there are already some great books. Okay. Herbs for Pets. That is everywhere. And when you were talking, about at the beginning, this is what I wanted to circle back to. I guess I'll do it now that we're at the end. You had mentioned Montana and where you were living and, how you got into all of this. And I wanted to ask, is that what prompted you to write the Edible and Medicinal Plants of the West?
Absolutely. Yeah,
That was it? Okay.
absolutely. That was,
Yeah.
that was my second book, and it's still a bestseller. It's amazing. I wrote
Yeah.
that book in 1997.
Wow.
My first book was called the Eco-Herbalist Field Book, and that was basically, I was so upset with the way industry was ordering herbs from me. Here's a good example. We had one wholesale person or company out of the Southeast that would give me a call and say, "Hey, Greg, I need," and they advertised that herbs harvested with the earth in mind. That was their quote, right?
Hmm.
They'd call me and say, "I need 200 pounds of dried arnica and I need it right away. Thanks." They never asked how I was harvesting it. I could have just been running backhoes and tearing up the forest floor and everything. It just bugged the hell out of me.
Right.
And at the same time, I was seeing all this interdependence in my harvest with animals, insects, everything else that was using it. So I wrote this book
Yeah.
that basically said, hey, if you want to walk softly in the forest, you got to learn first how to be a less invasive monster in the forest, because we are the square peg in a round hole out there,
Yep.
And so that was my first book. Then it was followed by Edible and Medicinal Plants of the West, and From Earth to Herbalist, which isn't in print anymore. Then Herbs for Pets came out. And
Awesome.
you'll see some smaller pieces too that will be offered through my Substack and everything else coming really soon, in addition
All
to
right.
those two big books that I'm talking about earlier.
I can't wait.
Yep.
All right. Make sure you check out his Substack, his books, his products, and his education. And Greg, thank you a million so much for coming on and talking to us today. I think that people are going to find this really useful. I know I did. I can't wait to research some of the stuff
It was a
that
lot
you
of fun.
taught me
I
and
learned
implement it.
too.
So, all right. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
I hope
Bye-bye.
so. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Please remember that you, yes, you, are the driving force that helps keep small businesses and platforms like mine running. So if you liked what you heard, please like, share, and most importantly, rate this podcast. It's the only way we can reach more people and spread the word about natural health. None of the conditions discussed or recommendations given are meant to replace the advice of your health provider. So if you have concerns about yourself or your pets, please confer with a human or animal health practitioner. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you next week.